Picture this. You're at Magic Kingdom right now. Your family has spent $5,000 on this trip. The sun is bright, lines are moving. And then, suddenly, the sky turns green. Not dark, green. Within 10 minutes, water is pouring down like someone opened a fire hydrant above the clouds. By the time it stops, Tomorrowland is a lake. Your shoes are soaked. Your phone is waterlogged. And here's what blows your mind. This keeps happening. Not once a year, not even twice a year, multiple times now. And the company that built a $25 billion empire on swampland never saw it coming, or maybe they did. But the real question? Those catch basins they built to handle Florida's worst weather? Overwhelmed. Completely overwhelmed. How did the most powerful entertainment company on Earth build something so broken on the most dangerous piece of real estate in America? In 1963, Walt Disney chartered a plane and flew over Central Florida swampland and saw something nobody else did. Not gold, not potential, magic. But here's what he really saw. Cheap land. For about $100 an acre, Disney quietly bought nearly 27,000 acres of remote, marshy nothingness. He did it through fake companies with names like MT Lot Real Estate Corporation. Yes, really, because if word got out, prices would skyrocket. By the mid-1960s, Walt owned a swamp, a massive one. Then came October 1971. Walt Disney World opened to its first guests. The cost? $400 million. Adjusted for inflation today, that's more like $3 billion. But here's the critical number they won't highlight in the commercials. Disney has now invested roughly $25 billion in total infrastructure, property, and development across Walt Disney World. $25 billion. That's more than the GDP of entire nations. That's more than most states have spent on anything in their entire histories. But money can't buy you out of nature's mistakes. Because in 1971, nobody understood what they'd built on. Not really. They just knew they had bought a swamp for cheap and had dreams bigger than physics. Fast forward 50 years. Disney World sits on one of the wettest, most flood-prone pieces of Florida ever developed. And the stormwater systems they built, the catch basins, the retention ponds, the ditches and drains, they're drowning under the weight of what Florida actually is. Not a theme park state, a drowning state. Let's talk about why a company with unlimited money is losing a battle against rain. Start with this. In the 1960s, this land was completely worthless. Real estate agents couldn't give it away. It was literally a swamp. Not swampy, a swamp. Cypress trees, marsh grass, water that went nowhere because nowhere wants water that moves like that. The Everglades are only a few hours south, and they've shaped all of Florida's water behavior for 10,000 years. The soil? Not suitable for farms, not suitable for development, not suitable for living things except alligators and mosquitoes. The state of Florida was happy to see it go. Counties gladly sold what they couldn't manage. Private owners took whatever offer came through, $100 an acre. Disney bought low and built a dream. But that dream sits on something a geologist would call unstable base conditions. What a human calls it, quicksand with optimism. The land Disney acquired wasn't random selection. It was strategic, remote, isolated. The closest power lines were 10 to 15 miles away. The closest water lines were just as far. Orange and Osceola counties had no resources to serve that land. No infrastructure. No development history, which meant nobody was fighting to keep it. Nobody had invested in it. The swamp was worth nothing because the state of Florida had essentially given up on managing it. For Walt Disney, that was perfect. Cheap, unclaimed, far enough from existing civilization that he could build a world on his own terms. The land cost roughly $5 million total. Today, that same land, improved, developed, fully operational, is worth hundreds of billions. That's the magic nobody talks about. Disney didn't invent entertainment. Disney invented real estate leverage. Here's the thing that kills me. Disney knew. Not everything, but enough. Their engineers ran studies before breaking ground. They understood Florida's rainfall patterns. The state gets between 54 and 65 inches of rain every year. Central Florida, where Magic Kingdom sits, gets around 50 inches on average. That is nearly 98 billion gallons of water falling on the Orlando area every single year. Enough water to submerge the entire island of Manhattan under 3 feet of liquid every single year. Think about that number. Every year. Not once. Every 12 months, that much water falls from the sky onto Florida. And the company that invented controlled fantasy looked at that reality and thought they could engineer their way past it. So they built a network of catch basins, detention ponds, retention lakes, and culverts. Thousands of miles of ditches and drains, underground pipes, surface channels, a stormwater system so elaborate, so complex, so expensive that it required its own government to manage it. That's right. They created the Reedy Creek Improvement District in 1967, a special taxing district that gave Disney control over drainage, utilities, roads, and infrastructure on their property. It was like creating a Disney-run city that answers only to Disney. The district handled surface water control, flood prevention, waste treatment, everything. And for decades, it worked. The swamp stayed beneath the concrete, the rides kept spinning, the money kept flowing. But nature has a way of reminding you who's in charge. Here's what people don't understand about Florida's climate. It's not just the amount of rain, it's when it comes, and how fast it comes. Florida sits between 2 oceans and a gulf. It's basically a peninsula shaped like an invitation for storms. The state experiences more thunderstorms and lightning strikes than any other place in America. We're talking hundreds of days per year where the sky opens up, afternoon convective storms that dump inches in minutes. When you combine that with being built partially below sea level, yes, partially, you get a water management nightmare that money alone cannot fix. Most of Florida is only 6 to 12 feet above sea level. Magic Kingdom's elevation? Around 65 feet. So Disney thought they had breathing room. But the swamp doesn't care about elevation. Water finds its way down no matter the topography. But here's where the story gets truly insane. Climate change is making Florida's problem exponentially worse. The rain isn't just falling harder, it's falling on a state that's sinking. Sea levels are rising at a rate of about 1/8 of an inch per year, which sounds small until you realize that means the entire system has to adapt. Groundwater tables are rising as the ocean level rises. And the swamp that Disney paved over? It's not gone. It's underneath the concrete, pushing back, trying to get where it belongs. The water wants to be there. The water is supposed to be there. When a storm hits, that water has nowhere to go except up and sideways, into the parks, into parking lots, into the experiences that cost thousands of dollars, into the vacation you've been saving for all year. The official numbers show what we should have seen coming. South Florida Water Management District, the organization that oversees more than 2,100 miles of canals, 2,000 miles of levees, and 600 pump stations across southern Florida, has admitted they're operating at capacity. More than capacity, actually. They've become a public entity managing a crisis instead of a management agency planning for the future. The system was built for a historical normal that doesn't exist anymore. Engineers from the 1970s made assumptions based on historical rainfall data. They looked at records and said, okay, worst case scenario is X inches in Y hours, so we build the system to handle that. That mathematical model, it fails in the real world now. And Disney's stormwater catch basins, they were designed based on that same 20th century rainfall data. We're now in the 21st century, where every year seems to break the previous year's records, where hurricanes spin up faster than ever recorded, where atmospheric rivers, literally rivers in the sky, dump rainfall that no 1970s engineer anticipated. Think about this problem at scale. Disney built extensive stormwater management facilities, including the World Drive North Regional Stormwater Management Facility in the Magic Kingdom parking lot. It's a 25-acre detention pond designed to catch runoff from the parking area, 224 acres of asphalt that turns rain into rushing water in seconds. The system routes water through concrete box culverts into a wet detention system. It's engineering at its finest. But when Hurricane Milton slammed Florida in October 2024, it didn't care about engineering. The system was overwhelmed. Guests at Epcot reported water up to their ankles. Magic Kingdom's Tomorrowland flooded. Not small puddles. Water that stopped you from walking. Water that ruined vacations. Before Magic Kingdom, before the parking lots, before the catch basins, before the fantasy, there was a living, breathing ecosystem. Florida's wetlands aren't wastelands. They're the most productive ecosystems in the world. A single acre of wetland can filter water, absorb nutrients, slow down floodwaters, and support more wildlife than 50 acres of dry land. They filter water naturally through plant roots and soil. They manage flood risk by spreading water across the landscape slowly instead of concentrating it into rushing currents. They feed wildlife, fish, birds, reptiles, mammals. Everything depends on them. The Everglades alone support hundreds of species found nowhere else on Earth. But Florida has drained 44% of its wetlands since becoming a state. 44% gone. Drained for agriculture. Drained for development. Drained because people didn't understand what they were destroying. And where did Disney build? On 550 acres of marsh near Lake Buena Vista that used to be part of that system. That's not 44% of the Everglades, but it's 550 acres that no longer does what nature designed it to do. What happens when you drain a wetland? The water doesn't disappear. It rushes somewhere else faster and stronger. Without the wetland to slow it down, to filter it, to spread it across the landscape, storm surge becomes a weapon instead of a natural process. Flooding gets worse downstream because the natural buffer is gone. Erosion accelerates because water's moving at full velocity instead of being slowed. Nutrient balance collapses because the plants and soil that filter nutrients are gone. The entire system breaks. Disney understood this. They had to. Environmental law required them to offset the damage. Federal wetlands law said, okay, if you're going to drain 550 acres, you need to restore or create equivalent wetlands somewhere else to balance the books. So Disney did something clever. They bought an 8,500-acre cattle ranch along the Kissimmee River that was slated to be developed into suburbs. Then they donated it, the land, plus $45 million, to the Nature Conservancy so the nonprofit could restore it to wetland and native habitat over decades. The Disney Wilderness Preserve. It's real restoration work, genuine conservation. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot buy your way out of ecological mistakes. Money can create new wetlands somewhere else, but it can't bring back the water filtration and flood management that should be happening underneath Magic Kingdom. You can mitigation and offset all you want, but the swamp that's supposed to be underneath Magic Kingdom isn't there anymore. It's been replaced with concrete and catch basins that are losing the battle against their own design specifications. The deeper issue is that Florida's water system doesn't work in silos. The Everglades, Lake Okeechobee, every canal and river system Disney's engineers have to account for, they're all connected. Drain one piece, and you break the entire system. Disney didn't cause the original wetlands loss. That was agriculture, urban sprawl, and a century of misguided water management by the state. But by building where they built, Disney became part of the problem instead of the solution. And now, with every flood, every overwhelmed catch basin, every guest sloshing through ankle-deep water in Tomorrowland, that choice looks worse and worse. Let's get specific about what's breaking. In July 2023, a storm descended on Epcot so fast that guests captured videos of themselves splashing through inches-deep floodwater. In August 2024, guests at Magic Kingdom reported running for cover as the park filled with water. Then came Hurricane Milton in October 2024. A Category 3 storm with rainfall rates so extreme that flash flood warnings were issued specifically for Walt Disney World. The catch basins couldn't keep up. The retention ponds couldn't hold the volume. The system that was supposed to be engineered for the worst weather Florida could throw at it was completely, utterly overwhelmed. If that blew your mind, every subscriber is automatically entered in our monthly giveaway for a branded hoodie. Details in the description. Here's the mechanical problem. A catch basin is simple, really. Rain falls, water flows into a depression, water sits there temporarily, water filters out or pumps out later. But the design assumes a maximum rainfall rate. In Florida's 20th century design standards, that meant so many inches per hour. In Florida's 21st century reality, that means more rain than the system can physically handle. When the capacity is exceeded, water goes sideways. It pools on walkways. It floods attractions. It turns a family vacation into a reminder that humans can't control everything. Disney's infrastructure team has acknowledged the problem in various statements and operational changes. They've retrofitted older parts of the property. They've modified stormwater retention zones. They're studying flood modeling. But you can't engineer your way out of climate change in a meaningful time frame. The solution would require rebuilding the entire stormwater network, which would cost millions, take years, and possibly close major attractions during construction. And even then, the basic problem wouldn't go away. Disney World is built on swampland during an era when global climate patterns are becoming more volatile, more extreme, more unpredictable. The real vulnerability is this. Disney doesn't control Florida's water. Not really. They control their own property's drainage systems, but the water flows into systems managed by the South Florida Water Management District, Orange County, Osceola County, and the state. When those systems are at capacity, and they increasingly are, Disney's local management becomes irrelevant. A $25 billion investment can't pump water uphill when the entire state is drowning. There's a governance question that makes this even messier. For 56 years, Disney operated under a special taxing district called the Reedy Creek Improvement District. Created in 1967 at Disney's request, it gave the company almost total control over infrastructure, planning, zoning, and drainage on their property. It was like creating a Disney-run city that reported to no one. The Board of Supervisors was controlled by Disney. The decisions were made by Disney. The consequences were managed by Disney. But here's what that meant. Disney made the stormwater decisions based on profit, not public safety. They designed to minimize costs, not to exceed all possible requirements. Then, in 2023, Florida's legislature disestablished Reedy Creek and created the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District instead. Theoretically, this gave the state more oversight. But it's complicated. Disney still owns most of the land, still operates the properties, still makes the major decisions. The new district just has more state appointees watching. And watching hasn't prevented a single flood. The governance structure, whether it's old or new, doesn't change the core problem. The catch basins are overwhelmed, and no legal structure can fix that. But here's what they didn't tell you about the governance shift. It exposed just how much power Disney had been wielding. For more than half a century, Disney essentially wrote the stormwater rules for their own property. They decided what standards to meet, what investments to make, what risks to accept. Nobody was forcing them to over-engineer. Nobody was mandating they exceed all reasonable expectations. They built to a standard. The standard became insufficient, and now they're scrambling. The state's new oversight came too late to prevent the problem and doesn't have the power to force the solution Disney needs to implement. Disney sells itself on control, on perfect managed experiences, on technology that solves problems. But stormwater management is brutally honest. You can't fake it. You can't make it go viral. You can't give it a rating. Water either drains or it doesn't. Catch basins either hold the volume or they overflow. And increasingly, Disney's systems are overflowing. The company has invested in advanced flood modeling, weather prediction systems, and operational coordination. They're studying rainfall patterns in real time. They're making operational decisions based on forecasts. During Hurricane Milton, they closed parks early, evacuated guests, shut down attractions. That's all smart. That's preparation. But it's also an admission that the core infrastructure can't handle what's coming. You don't need advanced models to tell you water's coming. You need a system that can handle it when it arrives. The deeper truth is that technology can improve response, but it can't fix the fundamental problem. Disney World is built on drainage-challenged land during an era of increasingly extreme weather. No sensor can change that. No app can pump the water out faster. No AI can predict a climate pattern and rewind it. They're fighting physics with spreadsheets, and physics is winning. Think about what this means for a $25 billion property. It means their biggest infrastructure investment is becoming their biggest vulnerability. Not terrorism, not economic crisis. Water. The one thing that built Florida, and the one thing that's now destroying what was built on it. And the more advanced technology gets, the more obvious it becomes that technology is not the answer here. This isn't just a Disney story. This is a Florida story. This is a climate story. This is what happens when you build massive infrastructure on borrowed time and borrowed land. Disney's $25 billion investment is just the highest profile example of a mistake being made across Florida. Entire neighborhoods are flooding. Roads are becoming impassable. Businesses are relocating. Insurance companies are pulling out. The state's second largest industry, tourism, is becoming vulnerable to weather in ways it never was before. But Disney's problem is the sharpest version because the stakes are so visible. When Magic Kingdom floods, millions of people see it on video. When normal neighborhoods flood in Miami or Tampa, it's a local story. When Disney's catch basins overflow, it becomes a national embarrassment. And that's actually important because it forces people to think about scale. If one of the most successful, best-funded companies in the world can't solve the flooding problem on property they own outright, what does that mean for everywhere else? The answer is this. It means nature is winning, not evil nature, not apocalyptic nature, just nature behaving the way nature does. Florida is trying to maintain a system that was built to ignore water while sitting on top of water. Disney is trying to maintain a luxury experience on land that was never meant to hold one. The catch basins are full. The retention ponds are maxed. And every year, the rain comes harder. There are solutions, real ones, rebuilt infrastructure, smarter zoning, restoration of wetlands to provide natural flood buffering. But those solutions cost more money, take more time, and require admitting that the current system is broken. Disney will likely implement some of them. The state will implement others. But none of it changes the basic fact. Disney built a $25 billion dream on a swamp, and the swamp is reminding them who was here first. Here's where this story goes, and here's where it terrifies me. Disney's problem is not unique. It's just the most visible. Every major coastal city in America is facing versions of this exact challenge. Miami is sinking. Charleston is flooding. New York is building in flood zones because land is expensive and we need it anyway. And everywhere, the infrastructure that was supposed to protect us was designed for a climate that no longer exists. The catch basins are overflowing, not because engineers were careless, but because they were designing for a world that's changed faster than anyone predicted. Disney will probably fix their flooding problem eventually. They'll spend millions. They'll rebuild systems. They'll maybe even restore some wetlands. And for a while, it'll work again. But here's the thing, nobody's saying, fixing Disney's problem doesn't fix Florida's problem. And fixing Florida's problem doesn't fix the global problem. We're building massive infrastructure on borrowed assumptions. Every time it floods, whether it's Magic Kingdom or Main Street or your neighborhood, we're learning the same lesson again. Nature doesn't care how much money you spent. Nature doesn't care how clever your engineering is. Nature cares about volume, pressure, and gravity, and right now, all three are winning. The question isn't whether Disney can fix their catch basins. The question is whether they'll fix them before the next storm, and whether the next storm will be worse, and whether there's even a storm after that, which they can't fix no matter how much they spend. Those are the questions keeping the engineers awake at night. And if that reminds you that the unexpected can arrive without warning, grab your free disaster preparedness toolkit. The link is in the description. This is a story about infrastructure failure, climate reality, and what happens when a company with unlimited money meets a problem that money alone can't solve. Disney built a kingdom on a swamp. The swamp is fighting back. And we're all watching to see who wins.